So, all right, well, let us kick off. Good evening, everybody. People I know, people I don't know. It's nice to see everybody. And I'm kicking this off with a quote from George Lakey, who is one of the gurus of direct action. And I should confess up front that most of what I'm going to say tonight comes either directly from George Lakey, either from his workshops or from stuff he has written, or from a training by Eileen Flanagan, who is a colleague of his. And so everything that I'm going to say comes from them. But I love that George Lakey says he will never again do a march or a rally because he is into things that are effective. And although there is a place for marches and rallies, there are other things to do. I'm going to talk tonight. I have a fair number of ideas to run past you. If people have questions, please just speak up. I can't, if I'm sharing my slides, I can't also see people. So just if somebody has a question, just shout out and we will stop. So we're going to talk about direct action and what it is and how we do it. And I want to say up front, a lot of people think that direct action basically means civil disobedience, and that is not the case. Direct action can certainly include civil disobedience, but there are a lot of other things that comprise direct action that do not involve risking arrest. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. And direct action, as you can see, is fun because it means thinking outside the box and using leverage to get what we want. I'm going to be talking some sort of as an example about a direct action campaign that Climate Courage has been doing for the last several years. Climate Courage, as you may recall, is the direct action wing of 350 Mass. And so when I say we, or I talk about a campaign that we've been doing, that is all related to Climate Courage, but there are certainly many other people doing direct action. So direct action is different from advocacy. Advocacy means it's just the stuff that we usually do, and it basically means going through channels to try to persuade people. So it means lobbying, means visiting your legislature, means emailing somebody, writing them a letter, calling them up, basically sort of taking the approved route to connect with them and trying to tell them what you would like them to do. Direct action is going outside of channels, and it is finding ways basically to use leverage to make your target just somewhat uncomfortable in a way that they then need to do what you want them to do because it's too uncomfortable not to. So that is really the key difference, that advocacy is going through channels. You have a relationship, you be friendly, you butter people up, you try to get them to think you're wonderful, and then they'll do what you want. Direct action is a little bit more strategic and unconventional. So a couple of basic principles about what direct action often looks like. Direct action addresses the problem itself. So for instance, it may stop something bad from happening. These are obviously people who are hanging out up in a tree to keep people from cutting the tree down. Presumably they're cutting the tree down to build something that we don't want to have built. So you're stopping something bad. That's very direct approach to the problem that you're dealing with. It may be making something good happen. This, of course, is the 1960 Woolworth lunch counter sit-in in Greensboro, North Carolina. People of color were not allowed to sit at the Woolworth lunch counter. So they went and did it because that was a good thing and it should be happening. So they made it happen. Very direct, addresses the problem right. Direct action at best creates a dilemma. Now, I'm not sure exactly what's happening here, but clearly this young lady is somewhere that she wants to be. And there are people dressed up in riot gear who do not want her there. But in order to get her to move, they're going to have to grab and be seen dragging off a naked woman. And that's kind of a bad photo op for riot police. So she's putting them in a dilemma. Either they have to do something they don't want to do, which is to drag her off and have their pictures taken, dragging off a naked lady and laying hands on her, or will be where she is. So that is very effective direct action.
Sue, interruption.
Yeah.
I think you're referring to images on the screen.
Yes.
The left side of my screen says Sue has started screen sharing. No images are appearing.
Is anybody else seeing images?
Yes, I'm seeing everything you've put up there so far.
Yeah, me too.
Huh.
You see it.
Okay,
I
let
see
me.
it.
I don't know, Tim.
Seeing it too.
Okay, keep on going then. Keep on going.
Okay, Evan, maybe you can help Tim. Direct action prioritizes, drama over numbers of bodies. I mean, if you have a march or a rally, you want to have more people because it's more powerful. With direct action, you're thinking more about doing something dramatic, something attention grabbing. So this is, of course, the Red Rebels from Extinction Rebellion. And, 5 of the Red Rebels can get as much attention and focus as a large crowd of people. So that's another important principle to remember. Okay, now this is key. If you're taking notes, this is a note to take. For direct action, it has to be a campaign. You do not do a one-off event because that doesn't work very well. And why is a campaign helpful? First of all, if we have staying power, we're more scary. The target can't just say, well, so this big deal one day, everybody will get over it. We'll just go back to doing what we're doing. If they know we're coming back and we're sticking around, then they have to deal with us. It's also good to do a campaign because training is a part of your campaign, and each action you can be training the leadership for the next action. So it's growing your team at the same time that you're exerting more pressure on your target. And then once again from George Lakey, until you have enough power to make them beg you for a meeting, you don't have the power to shape the outcome of the meeting. So you really want to be making people uncomfortable enough persistently and over time so that they finally say, hey, can we sit down with you guys and tell us what we need to do to get you to stop doing what you're doing? And only a campaign can do that. You can do anything for one day, won't do it. So one event, no. Campaign, you might start, for instance, by bird dogging, going where somebody is speaking and having people stand in the back and wave signs or yell at the speaker. The next event you might do is street theater. Then you gradually escalate. You might do a sit-in, you might do a blockade, then you might actually disrupt a meeting, keep them from doing something that they're actually trying to get done. But it's a series of events. It escalates. Each one is a little bit more bothersome than the last. So I hope I have now persuaded you, one, that direct action is creative and fun, two, that it addresses the problem directly, and three, that it has to be a campaign. So let's talk about how to design a campaign. Let's say, for instance, that our goal is we want to weaken the fossil fuel industry. That sounds like a good goal to me. And now I'm sort of referring to the campaign that Climate Courage has been pursuing for the last couple of years. All right, so if you're starting a campaign, you have 3 questions that you need to answer. And the first question is, who is your target? Your target is the person or institution that can give you what you want. And this is something actually that people often don't think through carefully. Like they may hassle the governor about something that really has to happen by the legislature. It's also picking a target is not an easy decision. You have to have access to your target. You have to have some way that you can mess with them. And some targets are harder to influence than others. So the choice of a target is really important. And now this is going to get complicated. So buckle your seatbelts, because picking a target isn't just as easy as saying, oh, this is the person that can do what we want. Should our target be the fossil fuel industry? Yeah, not really, because they're very hard to get to. I mean, how are we going to say, hey, fossil fuel industry, here's what we want? So we then listened to a guy named Gene Sharp, who has written a lot about this stuff. Gene Sharp talks about the pillars of power. And these are the people or institutions who support or hold up the actual target. So examples of the pillars of power for the fossil fuel industry, for example, well, who finances them? The banks, insurance companies. Sometimes a pillar is the church. Sometimes a pillar is a school or a university. Sometimes pillar of power is people who drive cars. They support the fossil fuel industry, the automakers. So those are all potential secondary targets. So we decided that we would take the financial supporters of the fossil fuel industry, and then you always want a specific target. So we chose Chase Bank because A, there was a national campaign targeting Chase Bank, and B, Bank is the #1 worst bank in the world for supporting the fossil fuel industry. So that was a pretty natural target, and it made us part of a national campaign. However, it's kind of hard to make direct target be Chase Bank, because it's not like, I mean, we can call up Jamie Dimon, the CEO of Chase, but it's really hard to pressure him directly because he's pretty well insulated. So then you say, well, who are associates or people who influence your target? For example, if I wanted to influence Justice Clarence Thomas, I might talk to Jenny Thomas, which I guess a lot of people are doing, because she's an associate. And we imagine that if she thinks something strongly, she's going to tell her husband about it. So we tried to think who were the influencers of Chase Bank. And of course, you know, the board of directors, the shareholders, but also the local bank managers. Because the local bank managers are sort of the public face of Chase Bank, and they can get on the email and say to upstairs, hey folks, we're taking a lot of flack about your policy about supporting the fossil fuel industry, and we're losing customers. And that'll go upstairs, and that's what we want to do. So we have a target. What are our demands? Demand is what you want. It has to be specific. It has to be possible. And of course, the target has to have control of it. So our demand for the fossil fuel industry, or for Chase Bank, is that they stop funding the fossil fuel industry. But our demand for the bank manager is, we want you to send an email up the line to the head office saying, hey, this is a very unpopular policy, this supporting the fossil fuel industry. It's costing us customers. Okay, so this all gets complicated and indirect, but you got to think through this stuff, because you got to know what you can do and what you have influence over. In fact, before we did an action, we went in and talked to the bank manager, and he's like, I'm on your side, guys. You know, I don't think Chase should be doing this. And he said, I'm happy to just send the email. You don't even have to do the action. So that was easy. Third question you need to answer, and again, this is critical, is what kind of leverage do we have with our target? Leverage is, what does your target care about that you can mess with? Okay, so depending on who your target is, obviously there are a lot of things. It could be just their reputation, their brand. If you can make them look bad, that may be important. If you can cost them money, that's always good. If we can get customers to take their money away from Chase Bank, that's leverage. If your target is an elected official, obviously they're going to be worried about reelection. So that's good leverage. If you can cost people customers, if you can cause them public embarrassment, if you can interfere with their efficiency or their productivity. Saul Alinsky did a great action where he was trying to target a bank, and I can't even remember what he was trying to get them to do, but he had people go in and line up at the bank manager or whoever's office, and somebody would go in and they'd open an account, and then they'd leave and go around to the back of the line. Next person would come in and open an account, and then when the first person got back to the front of the line, they'd close their account, and then they go to the back of the line, come back in and open another account. So they were totally gumming up all the people in the bank, and nobody could get anything done. And of course, what they were doing was perfectly legal. So if you can cost people efficiency or productivity, that can be very effective. And of course, exposing hypocrisy is always fun. So what leverage do we think we have with Chase Bank and with the local manager? Well, we can obviously damage their brand name, their reputation. We can stand around holding signs saying Chase Bank is the worst bank in the world, which we have done. We can hopefully make them lose customers. We can hand out leaflets that say, move your money away from Chase Bank, and that will cost customers and money. And we could just embarrass them publicly, say they're greenwashing, here's what they're saying they're doing, here's what they're actually doing. So we now have designed a campaign. Okay. Now, remember, a campaign is a series of actions. So what makes a good action for our first action in this campaign? Good actions have what's called action logic, which means that your action carries the message. You shouldn't have to have a sign. So good action logic is something like you get in front of a bulldozer and stop the construction of a pipeline. That's pretty straightforward. You don't want the pipeline, you stop them from building it. Poor action logic is stuff like, let's block traffic on a major highway to protest racial injustice. I mean, you'll get attention, but the connection between what you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish, or the message that you're trying to send, doesn't really compute. So your action should carry the message. We talked about this before. A good action should force your target to make a choice so that they can't ignore you. And another example of this is a Quaker group that was actually, again, tangling with the bank. And they decided to go into the bank, into the lobby, and hold Quaker meeting. And this put the bank in a very difficult position, because obviously having a bunch of people sitting in silence and praying in the middle of the bank is sort of bad for business, because people feel awkward about coming in, or maybe they're even locked in the and calling the police and dragging people off who are having a prayer meeting isn't all that great either. So this creates a really classic dilemma for the bank, and again makes the bank more likely to say, hey guys, can we sit down with you and find out what we need to do to get you to stop doing this? So this is apparently a very successful campaign. They did this in a number of banks in this chain, and they got the bank to go their way. A good action reveals a truth. So this is something we didn't do, but we thought about doing. This is, of course, the Four River Bridge, where there is now, of course, the Weymouth compressor station, which is not there in this picture. And one of the concerns about the Weymouth compressor station was that if there was an accident there, if it had a fire or blew up, that all the emergency vehicles would have to come across the Four River Bridge, and they wouldn't be able to get there because the bridge would be part of the accident. And also nobody from south of the four-wheel bridge would be able to get to Boston. There's a run around the bridge. So we thought we could blockade the Four River Bridge, and we could just demonstrate how hard it is to get anything done, to get anything to happen, to get anybody anywhere when that bridge is blocked. We decided not to, but it would have been fun. And it would have revealed a truth about the positioning of the compressor station. And a good action ideally appeals to shared values. It invokes something in the observer that they can identify with. And one group that is really good at this, of course, is Mothers Out Front, who always appeal to people's interest in kids. So see, the sign says clean energy for our kids. Well, I mean, who can resist and appeal to our kids? So that is always a good strategy. So those are the things that make a good and effective direct action. There are a couple of things that make it strategic. One is it should happen when your target is vulnerable. Now, when is your target vulnerable? Well, it depends on your target. If your target is an elected official, of course, when they're trying to get reelected during a campaign, they are at their most vulnerable. So that's a good time to start picking on them. If it's a corporation, when they are opening a new branch, they want to get new customers, they're in a new location, they want to make a name for themselves. This is why when Chase was opening new branches all around Greater Boston, we made a point of greeting each newly opened bank with street theater and signs saying, you know, Chase is a terrible bank, because they were at that very moment just trying to get a foothold in their new community. So that was a strategic time to do it. And ideally, your action should happen when media are already present, because then you don't have to do the whole media alert thing and be calling reporters and telling them to show up and like that. If you go somewhere where they're already there, then half your work is done. So again, if somebody is campaigning, campaign events often attract press. This, of course, is the Harvard-Yale game some years ago, when Divest Harvard and their colleagues and delayed the game to protest Harvard's endowment being invested in fossil fuels. And the Harvard-Yale game, I mean, you've got everybody there. You've got alumni, you've got the press, you've got the officials of both universities. So your publicity is a done deal before you even lift a finger. This was tremendously effective. Ideally, it's best to combine a direct action campaign with a campaign that is already underway doing advocacy. So ideally, you want one group to be doing the standard stuff, going through channels, meeting with whoever the person is, asking them to do it, emailing them, and then you layer top of that. And that saves everybody trouble and sort of amplifies your effectiveness. A couple more things. It's usually best before you start a direct action campaign to connect with your target, introduce yourselves, say who the group is, what you want. You don't have to tell them what you're going to do. You can keep that behind your back, as this lady is doing, but let them know we're going to be asking you to do such and such. And anytime you're ready to talk about that, we're happy to talk to you. Then when you get to the point that they are saying, please meet with us, they know who you are. You already have something of a relationship. You've already taken the first couple of steps. As I say, you don't necessarily tell them what you're going to do or when, but it's good that they know who you are. And it's also important after an action that you do two kinds of debrief. One is that you do it right after the action and you say, how did this feel? What was it like for everybody? How did it seem to go over? that things go smoothly. And then later that you really take apart, did we do sufficient preparation for this? Did we recruit enough people? Was it strategic? Did we have press there? Was it effective? What could we do better? So those are all important things to remember. And I'm sure that everybody listening is going to remember all of these things. So if this sounds like fun, we would love to have any of you come and help us do it. Climate Courage has been not doing a lot in the last year or so because of the pandemic, but increasingly, and certainly during the summer, we are able to do more outdoor stuff, and we would like to get in gear and start doing some stuff, and we would love to have anybody come and help us plan actions. So as I say, we have a chase campaign going on. This is an example of one of the actions that we did as part of the chase campaign. This was focused on extinction as a result of climate change. So we were blaming Chase Bank for extinction, and we had animal costumes and got a lot of passerby attention. We got some good media press for this. So we need another action. And we've been kicking around some ideas, but we are, let's say, looking for people to help us dream stuff up. Or there's also some discussion of a second campaign that we might start. This would be targeting the DPU, the Department of Public Utilities. And as I said before, they are a tough target. They are not elected, so we can't hassle them about getting reelected. They are appointed by the governor. They're not particularly public facing, so it's hard to get to them, but they have that key quality of a target, which is that they control a lot of the things that we want to have happen. So to the extent that there are things that we want, they are the people that we have to get to. Goals around the DPU, there are a number of them. Partly it's to do some of the things that they have not been doing or that they have really been slow walking. There are many municipalities that have put in applications for community choice aggregations so that the municipality can from renewable sources. And the DPU has just been sitting on these applications sometimes for years, which is outrageous. So we want to push the DPU to go ahead and approve those applications. There are also things that they may be going to do in the next 6 months of this administration that we don't want them to do. So we do not want them to push through a lot of bad stuff in the next 6 months. So those would be our various goals. Leverage, that's going to take some thinking. Again, this is not a group that where it's easy to know what we can mess with that they care about. But there are some things. So we think it's a possible campaign. So if anybody in this crowd is interested in coming play with us, Evan is putting a Google form in the chat. And if you just fill out that Google form, it basically wants your name and your email and what your interest might be. And it might be just showing up at an action, or it might be helping us plan an action, or it might be helping us strategize a campaign. Fill out the Google form and we will get in touch with you. And any questions? I will unshare my screen so I can see people. If you can raise your hand electronically, that's good, but I see Bob Wald raising a physical hand.
Hi. Since you're asking for somebody to do a particular thing, how important is it to get confirmation that it actually happened or didn't happen?
I'm not, you mean?
Well, for example, in the bank protest,
Right.
your example was get them to send an email to.
Right. What we have done is to ask them to copy us, blind copy us on the email. So to the extent that they have been willing to do that, we do know. Otherwise, we have to sort of look to the larger overall effect of the campaign. And Chase has been tough, but they are doing some things. They have budged in the last year, so progress, not perfection. Other questions? Ooh. Okay, well, I guess everybody now knows everything, which is great.